welcome to WACTS. This is episode 9. This week we're going to cover what I did from March 17th to March 30th. Had a couple weeks off. I was up in Vermont, down in Florida. Now I'm back. Welcome back to WACTS. There's a bunch of stuff this week, so just strap yourself in and we're going to get right to it. Architecture. Last week my wife and I went down to visit my dad and his wife in Florida. They're at a place called Nettles Island, which is near Jensen Beach. Nettles Island, you could write an architectural thesis about this place. It started out as a campground, and then all these little parcels of land have been divided up and sold to different people, and then now it's this place where people buy the land, and again, it's all the same size, and you have everything from, you know, people buy a $40,000 camper and they'll plop that down there and they live there and they're living their life, and then right next to them there's someone who has $4 million and they drop a house and put a house in the same size parcel right next to that camper, and all these people kind of live in peace and harmony together. This huge range of incomes. There's a height restriction. You're not allowed to buy up like multiple parcels and build a giant huge house on there or anything like that, but they all go to these same festival things and all these community events. All these there's like a communal cafeteria area, and there's communal tennis courts and racquetball and golf, and you know, there's actually a really cute mini golf course. Seriously, it's pretty awesome. But I was down there, and my dad was performing at this festival. Him and my uncle, they're both in their 60s, and they performed for like 3.5 hours, which was amazing, and people were dancing the whole time, and that was great. And I'm going to throw together a video for him because I filmed the whole thing, and I'll show that to you when that's done. But just wanted to mention that very quickly. What a cool socioeconomic place, and all these architecture, and there's so many different buildings. I'll throw a few pictures back here. All these different kinds of buildings that are down there. The beaches are beautiful. There's a river on one side. You get manatees. The other side there's the ocean. I got to go on a jet ski or a jet boat or whatever that thing is with my uncle. That was super awesome. It's absolutely beautiful. There's this cool trick that I'd never thought of where you kind of spin around and you make a big wave and then you launch off of it. That's right for a video game, right? Yeah, cool. Nettles Island, awesome. 5 stars, confidence 5. So then 2 weeks ago, I took the week off from doing this because I had to prepare to go up to Vermont for my first Vermont business trip, which was pretty cool. I went up with a project manager for my company, and we spoke to a bunch of people involved with the new Moran, which is an old coal power plant that they're turning into a theater or a event space with all sorts of things like farmers market and retail and all sorts of cool things. And my company, of course, does stuff like that since we're working with the Battersea Power Station in London, and we're doing stuff down in DC, and there's all sorts of projects like that, adaptive reuse, where you take an old building that's decrepit and no one's using it anymore, and you try to turn it into something new and exciting and cool. So great opportunity for us. It's amazing the long road that kind of led to me kind of pushing my company to get involved with this project. And I don't want to speak too soon because we're technically not involved yet, but I can say the meeting went really well. Everyone down there is super passionate, super excited about what they're doing. A lot of times in projects like this where you're trying to get something off the ground and trying to reinvigorate an old building like this, you don't necessarily have a lot of vision behind the whole thing. It ends up being kind of a design by committee sort of situation, and this project really benefits from a couple really young guys, Tad Cook and Eric Krockenberg, who just graduated from UVM like last year, and they are gung-ho, like they know exactly what they want to get out of this project. They're working with a guy named Charlie Tipper, they're working with Alex Crothers, all these big people in the Burlington community, Michael Jagger, all these people who I've been introduced to just lately, but all are really working together to give this thing a really great vision. So we started with a tour of the building, saw how it looks now, pretty good condition. We got a sense of what they want to do with the space and how it's going to start to reinvigorate the Burlington waterfront, which would be great. Burlington, Vermont, great city. If you've never been there, check it out. But we talked about hopes and dreams and went to Skinny Pancake and ate and talked about more hopes and dreams, and then we followed them over to the architect's office and talked a little bit to the architects, and surprise, they're involved in VR. And talk more about VR in a second. At the table of this project, I really hope to see us get involved on the architecture side, so there was that. But then we're going to go to VR. And so while we were at Skinny Pancake, I showed them some of the stuff I've been doing with my phone and VR and mobile and all that kind of stuff. And they're already familiar with IrisVR since they're a local, Burlington company that's working under Michael Jagger, and they're doing all sorts of cool stuff. So it was great to show them the kind of stuff I'm doing and how customized that is. And I think they got really excited by it. I talked about, branding little cardboard things that anyone could get that fits on any smartphone, and having a kind of virtual experience that shows people what the Moran looks like now and then what it's going to look like, and give people a chance to be involved and talk about what they want different spaces to be. And it could be a semi-guided tour, but we're trying to get apathetic people excited and get them to feel really vested in the future of this project. So I think they got really excited about the potential of an app to do something like that, and they really only have until the end of the year to raise enough money to really make this thing happen. So this could be a really great tool. So while they're still, I think, are trying to figure out when the best time is for FDA to get involved with our normal services, I think they really got excited about the app side of things, and I got a nice letter from Michael Jagger and a nice email from all those guys, and they really want to jump on that as soon as possible. So I'm currently trying to figure out with my company, since this is kind of new services for them, how do we price that, and how do I get involved with doing the right amount of work for this kind of thing in a way where it's useful to them, but still falls under the auspices of what FDA does and all that kind of thing. So that should be really exciting. I spoke with Marguerite Dibble, who is the CEO of a company up there called Game Theory. I spoke with the city councilor, Karen Paul, and got a really nice broad perspective from the outsiders of what they all think of the Moran and their involvement with Burlington in general and the way it's changing and growing, and just a cool little VR thing. So I showed both of them my apps and all that, and they got a kick out of it. After having breakfast at the Hotel Vermont with Marguerite Dibble, having a great talk with her about everything from power of games and that kind of way of thinking to affect change and that interactivity to television shows and sailing and all that kind of stuff. When we left, I accidentally left my phone behind at the bar, and then I was like, 5 minutes later I came back and there was a big crowd of employees from the Hotel Vermont all gathered around with this, that Oculus Rift face of like, whoa, what is this thing? What is it? And just total confusion. They didn't realize it was a phone. They didn't know what the cardboard thing was. And, I spent another 10 minutes just showing it to people and then just kind of being blown away. So even though, my app doesn't look like crazy beautiful right now, it's very functional, it does what it needs to, and people really love it, so that's kind of cool. And now I'm in the talks of very early kind of stuff, learning a little bit about how the patent process works and how something like that can move forward, and if there's anything there. I knew nothing about patents. I have 2 friends who have filed patents before, but that's a big learning process that I guess I should know more about, so we'll see how that goes. Wish me luck. VR, Moran, all that stuff is super cool. I went to this month's New York City VR meetup thing at the Microsoft building, same thing I did last month, but different presenters this time. Every time this thing's growing. The room was just overflowing with people. I had no chance at a seat whatsoever, but we started out with a great presentation by IrisVR, the Vermont Burlington guys I just mentioned a second ago, and Shane, the founder, CEO of the company, gave a very clean, excellent presentation about how the app works, or their software, and where it's going and where it is now, and all the improvements that they're going to have, and the way that they know and they fully understand what the process is of taking a 3D model from something like SketchUp or 3ds Max into Unity and then Oculus versus, their streamlined workflow, which is meant to be drag and drop. So I think they're doing some really smart things where they're showing people the tutorial to do it the manual way and being like, hey, you can do this too, but they're showing how long that takes and then trying to convince people that, otherwise might think it's not that hard, that, hey, their app's going to be really useful, for just wanting to get a 3D model and get it in virtual space very quickly. So I wish them all the best with that. That's great. Also presenting that night was Framestore, which is the company that did the traveling VR, Game of Thrones going up the wall VR Oculus experience, as well as the one for Interstellar where you're inside the spaceship, and that's been touring the country as well. So they do really high-end stuff. I mean, they're a huge multimedia company that's done all sorts of virtual interactive experiences, but this is the first real virtual reality kind of thing that they've jumped on. So I mean, that presentation was a little bit messier because the presenter actually originally wanted to present more about his history and where his background was, but then I guess his company was kind of like, oh, show them more about what we do. So there was a really cool video, but then the whole presentation felt kind of aimless and went on too long. I got a little bit bored, but still really cool stuff. Next month, I'm going to be presenting. I'm going to be the opening act for Kevin Perlin, who invented Perlin noise. That's kind of crazy. So, I'm only going to be talking for 20 minutes or so, but hopefully people get a kick out of me talking a little bit about what I've done. Huge audience, so, really exciting opportunity to just interact with them a little bit. I've already met so many cool people, and speaking of that, someone who actually found me, not actually physically at one of the meetup groups, but through seeing that I was involved with it online. I don't know if they read my bio or something, but I got contacted out of the blue by someone who was like, hey, we need to make a VR thing in Unity. Do you want to help us? And so I met with them on Friday, and I'm not going to reel too much until, the ball starts to roll, but it actually really seems like a really fantastic freelance opportunity. Originally, they thought that I was totally a freelance person, so I was going to be working with their company in-house, and that would have been kind of interesting. But of course, since I work a normal job, I would have to be totally freelance, so I thought they were just going to write me off, but then they're like, wait a minute, here's a big freelance project we're doing that you could do totally on your own, and they're thinking of giving that to me, so I think they're going to send me some more detail. I'm going to give them a quote, and we'll take it from there. But that could be a really exciting thing. All I'll say about it is I'll be designing a VR on-rails experience where you travel through all these locations, and the graphics need to be pretty good, and the whole thing needs to be very smooth, and it's going to be for the Samsung Gear VR thing with the phone, and that experience is fantastic, so I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. So wish me luck. I'll let you know more soon. Television. Okay, let's see if we can do these real rapid fire. Girls! I didn't really like this season, but I liked the finale. I think all the girls have become really kind of despicable characters, and I don't really enjoy seeing them as people. I never want to be friends with any of them. That being said, I think the finale actually had this really nice moment of, haha, growth for 2 of the characters. Just Shoshana, just Hannah. Hannah, I thought it was really nice to see her starting to come into her own a little bit with the substitute teacher thing, and also now saying no to Adam, and, you know, starting to grow a little bit in that way where she's more of her independent self and doesn't need to be dependent on him. Shoshana, this whole idea of taking a job instead of a guy. The other two girls, Jess and Marnie, I don't know what's going on with them. They don't seem to be growing at all, but enjoying the show. It's fine. 3 stars, confidence of 4. Scandal! I'm not even really sure why I'm watching it anymore. I thought the mid-season premiere was really good, the whole kidnapping thing. I don't even know what it's doing now. I don't really care that much. All the stuff with Cyrus in the past couple episodes, whatever. Kind of cool to see Lena Dunham pop up, speaking of her and girls, and play kind of this weird pseudo version of herself, but very articulate and very, like, free sexually. Woohoo! But then to have her throat cut out in blue. Remember when Huck was, like, kind of the lovable psychopathic killer? And now he's just insane. I don't know what we're supposed to feel about him, but there's nothing to like there. It's all just cringeworthy. So I don't know what's going on there right now. Scandal right now, getting a little bit sour on it. 2 stars, confidence of 3. Last Man on Earth, I talked about it a little bit more in the last episode. I'm all caught up with the show right now. I really like what the show is doing, but I kind of am a little bit frustrated by the past few episodes of this whole stuff with Melissa and another guy popping up, and they're growing the cast really quickly, which is unfortunate because I really liked when it was small. I loved the first episode where it's just Will Forte, and I'm a little bit worried they're growing things too quickly, not taking the time to really explore some of the comedic and just purely interesting potential of what happens when you just have 1, maybe 2 people trying to live in this giant world all by themselves. So, the Melissa plotline has been kind of frustrating because it just kind of makes Will Forte's character feel a little bit despicable, like it's tough to root for him. There's a lot of awkward cringe humor that I don't necessarily appreciate. That's some of the stuff that threw me off about girls for a little bit. Like, I like laughing because something is inherently funny, not because it's like, oh, that's so awkward, awkward laughter. I'm probably also a little bit bothered by the whole Melissa plotline because it reminds me so much of a time in high school when I was able to take a beautiful, way out of my league girl to a dance and all that good stuff, and I totally ruined it. And I was super awkward, and it was very much like the way that Phil's interacting with Melissa, so maybe it's drudging up some weird feelings there. I don't know. But I've shown Last Man on Earth, at least the first couple episodes, to quite a few different people now. You know, my dad and his wife, and different friends who have come over and that kind of thing, so I've watched the pilot like 3 or 4 times. Holds up so well. It's so fantastic. And really, when I say the pilot, I mean the first 2 episodes, because they play really well together. And it's fascinating watching the way different people react to these things, and all age ranges, you know, seem to enjoy it. But I love the fact that there's certain things that the women don't pick up on early on in the show where the guys get it right away. Classic example is cutting the hole in the diving board for the toilet pool. All the guys right away are like, oh, that's gross, and all the girls are like, what's happening there? So that's really fascinating. There's a real study here in the show of the difference between men and women, and I like that part of it. I really hope the show continues to explore those things in an interesting way and not just go for the, you're pretty, I want to have sex with you kind of direction that it's taken over the past few weeks. So we'll see. 3 stars, confidence of 2. Bloodline, watched the first episode of that new Netflix show. I love Kyle Chandler. I loved Early Edition and Friday Night Lights and his little part on The Wolf of Wall Street. As far as I'm concerned, he was the protagonist of that. And in the show, you know what? I'll be honest, his relationship with his brother reminds me a lot of my relationship with my brother. So that's kind of cool and interesting. Except I feel like they're doing so little work to make the black sheep brother in this show likable in any kind of way. Like, you're supposed to understand that he's a likable guy because the other siblings and that kind of thing are like, we love him, he's fun to hang out with, we just don't want him to work here. But he doesn't seem like a likable person. He just seems totally despicable, and there's nothing about him that you feel like, oh yeah, come on, give him a chance. So I'm not sure what it's doing there. Clearly this show is definitely made by the creator of Damages, because it ends in exactly the same way as Damages did, you know, this kind of mysterious death that's a flash forward, and I don't know, I don't know how I feel about that. There's a lot of voiceover, there's a lot of kind of talking down to the audience and not letting them come to their own conclusions. I don't know if that really happened as much on Damages. Maybe it did. Maybe the television landscape has just evolved a little bit and that's just not so chic anymore. I'm not sure if I'm going to watch more of it right now. There's so much other good stuff on TV, so I think for now I'm just going to let it sit there, and I don't know what people are saying about the end of this season, but you know, if people start to really be like, oh, have you seen all of Bloodline yet? Maybe I'll jump back into it. It's on Netflix, so not that hard to get a hold of, but we'll see. For now, I'm giving it 3 stars with a confidence of 2. Community is on Yahoo now, and that's kind of weird because I tell you, when you watch it on there, it looks like you're watching like news clips or something. Come on, Yahoo, you gotta make it look more like a TV show. By default, you think you're watching like little news reports or someone talking about their day. Hey, kind of like something I'm doing. And there's no cinematic presentation to the whole thing. Like, if they want to be a content creator now and make Community and have that be their show, like, you know, at least make the default screen size a little bit bigger. I don't know. Change that. episodes though. Community, yeah, it's doing its thing. You know, I was never a super huge Community fan. I think I enjoyed the first couple seasons quite a bit once I got into that. Since then, you know, it's kind of hit or miss. There are moments that are absolutely brilliant that I love, and a lot of it just kind of feels like beating a dead horse. So, you know, it's kind of weird this season that so many of the main characters are gone now. There's a lot of characters that I thought had potential early on that I've kind of given up on. I just don't know if Alison Brie's character of Annie has anywhere interesting to go anymore. It seemed like she was developing in a really fascinating way for a while, and then they kind of took her a few steps back during that season where Dan Harmon wasn't there, and I'm not sure if it's recovered from that actually, so that's unfortunate. Jillian Jacobs, fine. Joel McHale, fine. Abed, always great, but, you know, in a kind of predictable way. Same thing with Dean Pelton. A lot of these characters become, for lack of a better word, kind of one note. So it's fun to have as like a background thing, but I think the show's just fine right now. The VR stuff though, that was really cool in the second episode. I will forever now associate my VR experiences with "and Jesus wept," because what a great line. 6 seasons in the movie, I'm definitely going to check it out till the end. Community, I give 3 stars with a confidence of 4. Broad City, some people recommended the show to me when it first came out, and I kind of watched it and I was like, yeah, these girls are just kind of annoying, I don't see the appeal. And then they had, a few weeks ago, the most adorable appearance on The Daily Show of any guest, I think. And remember, I've seen every episode of The Daily Show for years, so that's saying something. And so I was like, oh, I gotta go back and give the show another chance, just because these girls like found a place in my heart just based on that one appearance. And yeah, on second viewing, I'll just say I watched the entire first season, starting with my plane ride to Florida, and so like really all in just a week. And I think it's a lot of fun. There's, again, a little bit too much of that awkward humor that I've talked about before, but some of it is genuinely funny. There's some moments like, you know, going to this weird island off Manhattan to pick up a package, which feels like every experience I had trying to go to the post office or figuring out how to get package delivered when I was living in Brooklyn. And the way some of these characters bounce off each other is fantastic. I love Hannibal Buress as the dentist. That's really cool. A lot of the little subplots just really tickle me in a great way. So 3 stars, confidence of 4. For Better Call Saul, we got 3 episodes to catch them here, so I'm just going to give some brief thoughts. Overall, I think the show is doing fantastic right now. I really like the direction it's going. The tonal shifts are pretty much all over the place. I actually think the pacing has been solved in a lot of nice ways. All of the last 3 episodes have gone by really quick in a way where once it's over, I actually have that feeling that I haven't really had since Breaking Bad, which is like, oh, I just want to know what happens next. Bingo, Rico, and Pimento, I think the penultimate episode was called. All fantastic. I'm really loving the way this show is drawing to a conclusion. There's something about this season, there hasn't really been a narrative arc, and I've mentioned the tones and the pacing have kind of been all over the place, but in a way I'm kind of loving it now. It feels like a Chex Mix or a, what do you call it, like Gorp, like a trail mix kind of thing. There's so many different morsels of fantastic plot lines and tones and story arcs that are absolutely lovely. I mean, the Kettleman thing kind of got wrapped up a little quicker than I expected, but that was great. And then they go into this class action lawsuit thing and the RICO thing, and, you know, we all knew that was going to be a RICO case because we've all seen shows like Sons of Anarchy, and I think even in Breaking Bad there was a RICO case mentioned. So, you know, I mean, that's all to be expected. But what I'm finding that I'm really loving right now, besides some of these really lovely contrasting tones of everything going on with Saul versus the stuff going on with Mike, which is a little bit more darker and criminal underworldy, and we all knew that veterinarian is going to come back, so that's cool. And we all know he's eventually going to introduce Mike to Gus, and that's going to be fantastic, and I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's going to be wonderful. And real quick, in this episode tonight, I think the writers very much knew that the audience thought that the very first person Mike was going to meet in the criminal underworld was going to be Gus. There's the talk about, you know, some Latino guys involved, and then there's the thing that they're meeting in the parking garage, and some of the shots looked a lot like the shots of Gus in the parking garage when he has that crazy Sixth Sense thing and like somehow knows like not to go in his car, which was crazy and mythic and epic and all that. But what I'm finding I'm really liking now, beyond all the things I just mentioned, is the team-up quality of the show right now. So in the Bingo episode, you had a great team-up between Mike and Saul, and that was fantastic. The first of many interesting relationships between them. The way those two bounce off each other is great. That was the first time we really got to see Mike start to do his private eye thing, watching the Kettleman house, going in totally nonchalant, you know, his little UV light. Jonathan Banks kills it in this role, and it's so wonderful to see him back. Then the episode after that, we got to see Saul and his brother Chuck like really hitting it off, putting together this case, and it's just kind of like, yeah, you're rooting for that team to come together, and watching them pull together this case was really fantastic and heartwarming and touching. And then, of course, in this most recent episode, my wife called it before even I realized it, and she hasn't even seen most of the show, but man, to know that it was Chuck who made that call, and Chuck's the one who's been keeping Jimmy from rising through the ranks of his company all these years. It's heartbreaking, but it makes so much sense because this is Chuck's life. That he holds the law sacrosanct. It is the most important thing to him, and he sees Jimmy as a parody and someone that doesn't take it seriously. And right now I think we're seeing the early signs of Jimmy, I guess, I hate to say accepting, but yeah, accepting that he is a different kind of lawyer and he's never going to be taken seriously, and all these little seeds are being planted for what's going to form the Saul persona, where it's like, fine, you say I'm mocking the law? Okay, I'm really going to mock the law, and I'm going to be ridiculous, and I'm going to make lawyers like you who take the law seriously hate me. And it's kind of a shame because, you know, it's so true that there's such a relationship here between Chuck and Jimmy really does love his brother, and he really wants for him to be proud of him, and the fact that he's realizing now, like, oh, that's just never really going to happen. You know, he says right to his face, people don't change. You were slipping Jimmy before, you're always going to be slipping Jimmy. It's really painful and incredibly well acted. Everyone in the show is killing it on the acting front. I can't just think of it as a comedy. It really is a drama. You know, and it's never going to be Breaking Bad because that's really such a focused, specialized story. And again, this feels kind of like a grab bag, but I'm loving it. Right now, I'm giving the show 5 stars. Can't wait for the finale. 5 stars with a confidence of 3 right now. Board game. So during the winter months up here in the great northern woods, my wife is actually usually the one who has to pick me up from the train station, so my schedule is a little bit tied to her, and so when she's working late, I have to stay in the city for a few more hours, and so sometimes that means trying to find something to do in the city, like the VR meetups and that kind of thing. And finally I got a chance to do an evening of board games the other night when she was working late, so I went to this place called the Uncommons, which is down by Washington Square Park, and I'd been there a couple times to check out their incredible collection of board games, and this is the first time I actually sat down to play a game. So this was part of another meetup group I'm a part of. It's like New York City Board Games and Card Games or something like that. I've had meetings with them up at like the City Core Center and that kind of thing, which is kind of cool because I did a big architecture project on that. Whatever. Anyway, played a game called Istanbul with my friend Dan and some people who work at Bloomberg. Keep Bloomberg in mind, that's probably going to come up in a couple weeks. What? And it's this game where you basically create like a little, you know, it feels almost like a bazaar. Like you lay out all these tiles, and all those tiles are different like buildings where you do different things. And the object of the game is to collect a bunch of rubies, like really pretty little ruby pieces. And what's nice is there's so many different strategies and ways into this game. All these different ways to collect rubies. In a 4-player game, you have to collect 5 of them, I think. And so, you know, you can collect them by gathering all these different resources and trading all those in. You can gather a bunch of money and trade those in. You can fulfill certain tasks like filling up your inventory wheelbarrow thing and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of different ways to go about this. You know, there's kind of like the victory point track where there's certain things you can do where you're going to get a ruby, but it doesn't actually improve your abilities in any meaningful way. And then there's the kind of ways you can eventually get a ruby where you're also improving your abilities and kind of upgrading as you go, but it takes a little bit longer. So I actually did very poorly in this game. I came in last place very firmly, but it's one of those games where like as soon as I was done, I was like, oh, I know exactly what I would do differently next time, so I'm excited to play again. So Istanbul, for now, I'm giving it 5 stars with confidence of 3. Video game! So the masterminds over at Steam, besides, you know, creating the next great VR headset, which I'm excited to take a look at, apparently it's going to be like free for developers, but that's a different story. The weekend I was going to Florida, they did a magical little thing where they were like, hey, let's take everyone who has a Steam account and in their library just put a little gray game, or 2 of them, and say 1 day left. Huh, I don't know if they've done this before, they probably have, but basically it was like a free-to-play weekend thing where it's just like, here's a couple games, you can download them, you can play it all you want, and then, you know, when the weekend's over, then you have to buy it. And not in a mean way where it's like, now you have to pay full price, oh, how horrible will that be, but it's like heavily discounted. So there were 2 games, one was called like Killing Floor, and I tried that, and I was all zombie crazy shooting them up, not my really thing, and then the other one was called Tropico 5. I didn't know there were 5 of these games, I'd never heard of it before, but it's basically a city simulator, but like on a tropical island, very much a nice sense of humor. The last real city simulator I played was actually SimCity 2000, like I actually really haven't kept up with the sim games over the years, and this is really fun. Like I've put probably, geez, maybe 20 hours into it over the past week or so, maybe not that much, that's a lot, but it's a really cool game, and what I like about it is not only is there a sense of humor, the choices feel very meaningful. Like there's a lot of paths where a lot of it has to do with like who you're going to side with, because you actually progress through ages in a way, so it feels almost like a cross between like SimCity and like Age of Empires, although you can't control your armies, and that drives me crazy. Like when you get attacked, the game's basically frozen, and it's like your armies just have to beat them, and if they don't, then you die, and there's little control once that happens, so that's unfortunate. But minor nitpicky thing. It reminds me of a game like Age of Empires because you progress through ages, and so you go through like the colonial era, and your first step is to declare independence, and then you're in the World War era, and you have to side with the Axis or the Allies, and then you have an invasion and you fend them off, and then you're in the Cold War era, so then you side with either the US or the USSR, and so, you know, as the game progresses, of course, you get new technologies, and your roads become modern, and you have access to electricity, and there's elections, and what's nice is you're a dictator, but you can be a benevolent dictator, or you can be an evil dictator, so you can rig elections, or you can have normal elections, and you can have a militaristic society, or you can have a totally open, friendly society, and you can close your borders or open them, and so the freedom of that is really cool, and there's a character to whatever city you decide to build that's really fun. And to be fair, the game kind of nudges you in certain directions, because you'll get little pop-ups where it's like, hey, someone really wants cigars, do you want to export it to them? And you'll get this big bonus of money, so you're like, sure, and then you take your corn plantation and change it to a tobacco plantation. But anyway, it's nice because you really can do whatever you want. The campaigns are not really that interesting. It feels like almost like tutorials, like, now try to do this, okay, you did it, done. Now do this, it did it, done. But I'm really enjoying the sandbox version of it, so I haven't even completed a full, you know, cycle yet. Right now I'm stuck in the Cold War. Not stuck, I'm progressing through it, but it's really cool to grow your city and have this big island to explore. So I recommend the game a lot. It was totally worth the $10 that I think it cost at the end of that free weekend, so good job Steam, good job Tropico. I'm giving this game 4 stars with confidence of 4 right now. Fuck! Okay, get ready to talk about All You Need Is Kill and Edge of Tomorrow and everything that's come of that movie, which I think I've already talked about, but now, you know, this movie has really stuck with me to the point where, hey, I bought it, that's kind of cool, look at all the cool special features and stuff. And it's such a shame that this movie was such a box office flop, because, yeah, I mean, it was marketed terribly, it looked like some big dumb action movie, but there's a smartness and a preciseness to the way the movie turned out that I just find so impressive, especially the more I learn about how hard it is to get a feature-length film made, and when you have so many people, you know, who have their say in it, and it can get watered down and all the edges can get filed off. So it's amazing that a movie comes out at all, let alone a good movie, and this is a really good movie. So over the past few weeks I've read the book and read the script and watched the movie again, and even watched Groundhog Day again, because it's kind of a similar movie. So I'm going to talk about all that stuff. Let's start with the book. All You Need Is Kill, short novel by Hiroshi Sakurazaka. Interesting reading that after I actually read the book after seeing the movie and reading the screenplay. So there's elements of the book that I thought were fantastic. You learn a little bit more about the mimics and where they came from, and there's this cool little thing where it's like, oh, the aliens that are invading Earth, they're not actually the invading force. There's like an intelligent, sentient life force that sent those out as almost like mindless scouts that just kind of adapt to whatever planet they're on and then terraform it so that then, you know, the elite can come over to the new planet and be like, ha, this is breathable for me now, and not deal with all the genocide that's happened beforehand. So that's kind of interesting. The book had a fun style to it. It had a lot of extra characters and extra little subplots that I think made a lot of sense to streamline for the film. We're going to talk more about this, so we're going to jump right to the movie. Okay, so now the script. The script is actually a lot worse than the movie, which is surprising. A lot of times you read the first like draft of a movie script and it's actually like, oh, they cut out a lot of good stuff, and oh, why'd they make this character a woman when, you know, they were a dog. I want to talk about the endings, because each of these have very distinct endings, some of which work better than others. So in the ending of the book, it's not like he saved the human race or anything like that. It's like, okay, he figured out how to get out of the loop for this one battle, but then I guess like maybe he can still get back into the loop and he's just going to go fight a bunch more battles, so, you know, there's no salvation of mankind thing going on. It's like, okay, now I have this ability, but of course, you know, Rita's dead and all that, so that's consistent and sad. So it was really interesting to read the script, because while the seeds of what became this great movie are there, it definitely was really rough around the edges. There are a lot of choices in there that are so glad were not kept. Unfortunately, they still kept the title Edge of Tomorrow, which is very strange. I don't know who thought of that. In the script, it's the Battle of Florida, and this big fight happens at Disney World, which I'm sure no way Disney would have allowed, but that could have been kind of visually interesting. Way too much emphasis is placed on the love story with Rita, much more so than the book, and it feels tacked on and gross and unnecessary, and it's this, you know, you can't make someone fall in love with you from scratch who you've never met before in a day. no matter how hard you try, that's going to ring untrue, no matter how much you know about them. So I'm glad that that got boiled down a lot more for the movie. Obviously, since it's going to be a Hollywood movie, it makes sense to make the main character American instead of Japanese. Obviously, Tom Cruise hadn't been cast yet, so the character is like a young rookie kind of, you know, guy in the army who's supposed to be like 20 or something like that. So he has cute little crushes on like the lunch lady. That might have been the book. I can't actually remember now. Don't quote me on that. I think the movie was an improvement on the script and the book in almost every way. I love that the love story was pretty much all cut out. You know, the little kiss at the end, you can almost interpret that as just a for good luck kind of thing instead of like, I've loved you for all my life, I didn't even know it. The idea of adding this Omega element, which wasn't in the book or the original script, so it's like, you know, upgrading, because the game already, because the movie already feels like a video game, it makes sense to have this like, you've defeated the first boss, now go to the larger boss, and they still play on this whole idea that, you know, the mimics know that you're going to try to do that, so everything that happens at the dam, and I think they get to the meat of the story a lot quicker in the movie. Like, pretty much everything that happens in the book and the original script has happened by 25 minutes into the movie, which is great because it allows more of a build and more interesting things to happen, and to have this salvation of the human race idea feel a little bit more justified. It builds to it in a really clean way. Again, the cutting, the directing, the way that everything is done in this movie is so well done. I love the way the mimics look. I love Tom Cruise's this. I really like, and again, this wasn't in the book or the screenplay, this idea that he's this, you know, ad agency, almost like Don Draper kind of guy who's just out there telling everyone to go to battle, but not involved in their getting his hands dirty in any way. And it's a really clean, interesting way and to get an older guy into this situation where you can have him play off of Bill Paxton's character in this, who's fantastic, and all the other grunts who's like, who the hell is this guy? And put him in that situation where from day one he doesn't have any training, and they're basically sending him on a suicide mission, but now he has this incredible way to, you know, play the day over and over again and become absolutely amazing. And then when you cycle back to the Major, played by Brendan Gleeson at the beginning again, and it's like, how did you get back here so quickly? There's so many great humorous elements to this that feel organic, and when you're inside Tom Cruise's character's head, and then eventually Emily Blunt's character's head, it's just really well done. And if you can't do Disney World, why not have that big battle at the Louvre at the end, which is a lot of fun. And you know, I mean, yeah, it's minuscule probability that that works. Like, why wouldn't there just be 1,000 mimics there guarding everything around the Omega? But it works. It feels justified and earned, and there's a satisfaction to that ending that I like. Even the idea that he wakes up a little bit earlier before, I mean, I'm still not totally sold on the ending and how happy it is, but I buy it. So the book, All You Need Is Kill, 4 stars, confidence of 4. So the first draft script of Edge of Tomorrow, I give it 3 stars with a confidence of 4. So the final movie, so many great choices there. You know, as someone who's never been in the military and has no involvement in the military, it's really approachable and interesting to have Tom Cruise's character be thrown in that situation and have that evolution from a snarky kind of asshole to someone who genuinely is willing to sacrifice himself to help other people and save the human race. So that's really great. I give the movie 5 stars with confidence of 5. So finally, to kind of go back to what a lot of people compared this movie to, this was the action version of Groundhog's Day, which I had seen, you know, years ago, but really couldn't remember much about. But it's on Netflix streaming right now, so my wife and I watched it the other night, and my God, this movie holds up. It is absolutely a comedy, but there is such a commentary on like the human condition here. You know, taking this guy, Bill Murray, who is great in this role as kind of the guy who kind of hates his job at that point and really doesn't even know why he's doing what he's doing and hates the city he has to go report on, and taking him from that to this guy who is so full of life and energy and the joy that comes out of helping people and being selfless and understanding the reward that comes from something like that by the end is really so well done and so well crafted. And I like the fact that, you know, for all you know, he's been playing this day over and over again 30,000 times, and I think Harold Ramis, you know, rest in peace, did a fantastic job with the script here. I would love to see, this is a movie where I'd love to see how many drafts the script went through, because there's so many different directions you can take an idea like this. 2 things kind of stood out to me about this movie all these years later. It's been more than 20 years since this movie came out, and you know, I think if you made a movie like this today, forgetting about something like Edge of Tomorrow, even if it's just a comedy, it's really weird that there's no reason given for why he is living this day over and over. So, you know, you look at what was that movie with Ryan Reynolds and Jason Bateman where they like pee into a fountain and switch bodies or something like that. Like, you always need to have some kind of gimmick for why this thing happens. Not the case here. He's just living the same day over and over. There was no reason given why. There's not a cursed groundhog or anything like that. The other thing is that the ending is unabashedly cheerful, happy, hopeful, no sense of that sardonicness that's present early on in the film. So that's kind of interesting, kind of refreshing. I don't feel like there's been a lot of movies like that end that way and feel like they've earned it that much. So Groundhog's Day really holds up a lot. 5 stars, confidence of 4. So after seeing my dad and my uncle perform for so many hours at that spring festival down on Nettles Island, we thought it'd be great to watch Whiplash, which is a movie about a drummer, and my dad was a drummer in a rock band for 20 years and a singer and songwriter and all that stuff. So great place to approach this, and I love J.K. Simmons. I think he's great in all the little character actor roles he's had. Fantastic as J. Jonah Jameson in Spider-Man, so really excited to see him just yell at some people, and that is exactly what he does in this movie. What a fascinating character study. You know, it's almost like a play. There's pretty much just like 2 locations in the whole film, and it works. Like, I was right on the edge of my seat the entire time. The way you progress through this kid who starts off just with raw talent and then starts to get like sculpted and molded and pushed to his extremes, and then, you know, I don't want to actually spoil the movie. I don't think a lot of people have seen this, and anyone that has drive or ambition or, you know, has wondered what it's like for someone to give all of their life to one passion and trying to be the best they can be at that one thing should see this movie, because it is such an incredible study of that. And the ending, again, I don't want to spoil it, but the ending was perfect. The moment where you cut to black could not have been better. And, you know, for anyone who likes drumming, the drumming in here is amazing. This is not simulated. This is a kid that started out as like a rock drummer acting in this movie doing fantastic jazz drumming. I mean, the only spoiler kind of I'll say is, you know, it's cut together. So some of the scenes, there's an epic drum solo in the movie that I think was like 3 days of shooting, where in the movie, of course, it's presented like it's all happening at once, but, you know, there's like blood on your hands and all this stuff. And my introduction to this movie was actually a parody that Weird Al did, where, you know, he does this thing where he'll do like interviews or whatever, and he'll cut scenes from an interview and then make it look like he's interviewing the person. They're very funny, check it out. But he does that with taking J.K. Simmons yelling at this kid in the band room, but it's Weird Al like practicing accordion, preparing to go on his tour. So very clever. But that was my introduction to the movie, and I thought like, oh, this movie takes itself too seriously just based on that. But then seeing the movie, it absolutely works. That's all I'm going to say. Just go check it out. 5 stars, confidence of 5. Whiplash, bam. Okay, last one. Into the Woods. Into the Woods is a musical I have such passion and love for. It was the last musical I did in high school before graduating. 10 years ago exactly, and I got to play the wolf, and it was so much fun because I'd just gotten done doing like my original one-act play thing, and then it was like a light, small, memorable part, and I got to sing and have fun and be skeevy and weird and have tons of spirit gummy hair coming off of me. So it was great, and I love the music in this musical. I love the way the stories are done. I love that the ending of Act 1 is basically a happy ending that's just combined all these different stories in a really clever way, and then Act 2 is a fascinating exploration on that whole idea of happily ever after, and knowing that princes are going to get bored and everyone's going to somehow become complacent with whatever situation they have, no matter how happy, and there's no such thing as happily ever after. In a way, it's kind of the antithesis of what I was just saying with Groundhog Day, how, you know, very few movies can pull that off in a genuine way anymore. And this is a situation where it makes sense that there isn't a kind of happily ever after ending, because they're exploring the opposite of what most people are used to watching, like a fairy tale movie or reading a fairy tale book. So, how'd the movie do? It was fine. It was fine. There were a lot of elements to it that felt bland and not really taking advantage of the film medium in an exciting way. For some reason, I'll just say my 2 favorite things: some of the wide sweeping shots that gave a sense of the kingdom, that was kind of fun, and everything that the princes did at the waterfall. I thought that was really the only place where it was really taking advantage of the medium of film and taking a song which is already hilarious on its own. I've listened to that song probably 150 times in the past few years, and they take that idea of the princes like striking poses and tearing off clothes and trying to one-up each other in a really fascinating and exciting and hilarious way that absolutely captures the spirit of that. Everything else, I'm not sure how much it added to have, you know, the witch being able to disappear and have crazy special effects and smoke and all that. Like, I don't think in the movie anyone ever felt like that kind of stuff was necessary. Similarly with the giant. Like, okay, sure, it's fine to actually have a huge giant there, but you can, you know, this thing just works so well as a musical, and I'm not sure how much extra was brought to it as a film. The other problem with doing this as a film is you have people here who are theater people. You have people here who have done some theater but maybe don't have the best voices, and then you have people here that have never done any kind of theater at all and are just kind of you know, doing their little thing that they're used to. And then you have people here that have never really done theater at all and are used to movie roles and that kind of subtle acting that really, that's not what this kind of thing calls for. It reminds me actually of when I saw David Duchovny on Broadway, and he is such a quiet, low energy level actor that can work when you have a close-up on him and he's Fox Mulder or he's Hank Moody or something like that, but on stage it's just death. There's nothing to pull you in, especially if you're not in the front row, to give you any interest in this guy, because physically he's still and tonally he's low there and not doing very much. So, you know, that happened a little bit in this movie where there's some parts that you have like a film actor kind of mentality going on when it needs to be big and it needs to be expressive and it needs to be exciting. There needs to be an energy to this kind of thing. That's how they're written, and I think that's how they need to be performed, whether it's a movie or a musical. But hey, still fun. A lot of the songs are still really well done. I really like the actor playing Jack. Again, the princes are fantastic, so check out the movie. Meryl Streep's obviously having a lot of fun, but no one can touch Bernadette Peters, so hey. Emily Blunt again, who played Rita in The Edge of Tomorrow. It's tough to see her as the baker's wife here. I mean, I'm most familiar with her from Edge of Tomorrow and Looper, and to put it bluntly, I think she's too classically beautiful in such a way to be a peasant and to be this kind of baker's wife character. It's just really tough to believe her in that kind of role, and she's a great actor, but her and James Corden together, that's a weird couple to try to believe in, so minor squirrel. My wife and I enjoyed it a lot. Check it out. I'll give it 3 stars with a confidence of 4. Quick into the Wood story. So being backstage during my high school production was always fun, especially toward the end, because, you know, it really gets sad, and I think I was like tearing up every time we performed it, even during dress rehearsals and stuff. But you have that wonderful song that's between the baker and Cinderella and Jack, and, you know, it's that just remember, and you have the baker saying like, someone is on our side, and then Jack goes, our side. But the kid playing Jack, who I love this kid, he's a fantastic actor, great singer, everything he does, but his voice was so different from the actors playing Cinderella in the Bacon Hour production that he had this our side, that I cracked up every time. Every time I was at that part of the show, I'd be tearing up a little bit because it's so emotional, and then it would just go right to laughter. So just a fun little anecdote. Hope you enjoyed that. Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. That was a lot to cover. If you made it this far, you're amazing. If there's anything you want me to talk about, or you have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know in the comments below. Next week, I'm obviously going to be talking about the season finale of Better Call Saul. I'm going to be talking about this freelance project, if that gets going this week. I'm going to be talking about my original very first play, La Salle d'Or, because we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of that, and I got something kind of cool planned for that whole thing, so that'll be fun. Videos this week. A couple weeks back, I finally got my phone to use a little app called Framelapse to take a picture like every 5 seconds and take us through my entire commute from door to door, from up here in Phillipstown, New York, all the way down to my office near Union Square in Manhattan. So it's, you know, driving to the train station along a crazy dirt road, and then it's on the train station, and it's not to scale, like the train stuff goes by much quicker than it actually does. But then, you know, getting to the city, and then getting through Grand Central and hopping on the city bike and city biking to my office, and then getting out of that and walking, and that's all really cool. So if you want to see what that looks like, I took the hour and 40 minutes and compressed it to like a minute and 40 seconds. Pretty fun. And then next week, of course, I'm going to be talking about the premiere of Mad Men. That's fantastic. It's so dumb that there's only going to be 7 episodes. AMC, you guys are dicks. But they're doing this kind of interesting thing. You might have heard a few months ago, maybe it was like a couple years ago, where Star Wars, they did like a fan cut thing where all these fans grabbed like 10, 15, 20-second clips from the movie and then like recreated in all sorts of silly ways. Some parts were animated, some parts had puppets, some parts had kids, dogs, whatever. And so Mad Men is actually doing that with the pilot episode in a really clean, organized way. The website is madmenfancut.com, and they just divided out the pilot into all these like 20 to 30 second clips and basically said, you know, 5 people can pick each one. I imagine they'll edit together whatever they get in an interesting way, and they just said be creative with it, have fun. So I've been meaning to do this for a couple months, and technically the time I had expired. They were only supposed to give you a month, but I was able to submit it yesterday. So anyway, I took a clip with Pete Campbell and those guys when he's talking about his bachelor party, and my wife did like the costumey stuff and helped me set the composition and light it, and so check that out here. And also, if you look down in the comments, I actually set up a comparison of the original clip versus what we did, and that turned out really well. So I'm happy with that, and hope you enjoy that. Lots of fun stuff going on, and there might be a special announcement next week, but if not next week, it'll be the week after. So be sure to come back for that. I will talk to you soon. I will see you next week. Bye. Agony far more painful than yours.